We're in the second week of a 3-week series entitled Age Old, and today we live in a culture that has new ideas by the day. It seems like innovation is constant anymore, and it seems like the change and it seems like the innovations are just coming faster and faster every day. What once we considered essential often quickly becomes outdated within years, even months. And so we did this last week, but I thought I'd have a little bit of fun as we start out here today. Okay, you ready to have a little fun with this game? Who remembers these? Okay? Typewriters, that's right. This is a typewriter, everyone. Back in the day, you had to put little paper in this machine, and you'd hit these keys on the keyboard, and they would come up. These little arms would smack the paper with ink. And then if you made a mistake, you had to take the paper out. You had to use this little invention called whiteout, right? And then you had to put it back in the exact place so you could begin typing again. Now today, what can you do? You can just talk to your computer. You can just talk to your phone or your watch, right? And it will type for you. Okay, how about this one? Who remembers these? Okay? Encyclopedias, right? I mean, check this out. This is an encyclopedia, and you used to have to look things up in these paper books. Can you believe that? Now today, you can just simply ask your phone or Alexa or OK Google a question, and they'll do the research for you. Okay, last one. Who remembers these? Cassette tapes. You remember this? See, this is what our music used to be on before CDs. See, back in the day, we put these into what we called boom boxes. Anybody remember boom boxes? And in your boom box, it would be thumping, you would be dancing until the dreaded sound would come, and then you had to open it up, you take out the cassette, and the tape would just be flowing, right? So you had to get a pencil, right? You remember this? And be able to wind it back up again so that you could listen to your cassette. Now today, what do? You just tell your phone or you tell Alexa, play my favorite song. And then they play it, okay? See, everything seems like it's constantly changing in our culture today. So we begin to ask questions like this. Is there anything that will never change? Is there anything that's in this life that is constant anymore? Or is that impossible in our day and age? And then we begin to ask those questions and we dig deeper into serious things about truth, about morality, about the purpose of life, about who God is and the pursuit of Him if He's real. And we began to answer some of those questions last week as we took a look at some of the age-old truths that are indeed in the Scriptures, things that will never change about us and about God. And we looked at the account of Noah and the flood, this incredible story. And we learned 4 age-old truths about God and ourselves. And here's what we can always count on. These 4 things: wickedness breaks God's heart. Always has, always will. And then we learned that God desires a close relationship with all people. Always has, always will. Third, God favors and cares for those who are in relationship. Always has, always will. And then fourth, God blesses obedience. God won't bless disobedience. See, these are age-old truths that we can count on because they're the same yesterday, today, and forever. And now today we're going to turn to the historical account of Queen Esther. And as you find Esther in your Bibles, I'm going to ask you some questions as you get there, okay? Have you ever found yourself in one of these moments of decision where you had to choose between something that was right or wrong? I think every one of us has, so let me dig deeper. Have you ever had to choose between what was selfless rather than what was selfish? So you had to choose between what benefits you or what benefits others. You know, it could be the kid who's getting picked on at your school. You have a choice to make. See, do you stand up for him and do you step in, or do you stand by and just allow him to get picked on and bullied? You know, it could be the underage drinking party that your friend invited you to. You have a choice to make. Do you go even though you know it's illegal? Or do you say no and possibly tell somebody about it? You know, it could be the gossip about the mom at the bus stop. You have a choice to make. Do you tell them to stop? Or do you just stay silent? Or do you participate? It could be something unethical taking place at your company. You have a choice. Do you report it, or do you just put your head down and worry about yourself so that you can keep your job? See, regardless of whether you believe in God and you're here today, I think at some point in all of our lives, we will find ourselves in Esther's position. Now, it might not be as extreme as Esther's situation that we're going to look at today, but I think that we're all going to see that we can relate to Esther in one way or another. So today I'm really excited to be able to teach you some history. And that's a sentence that I would have never thought would come out of my mouth. I'm excited to teach you some history that's going to lead up to our age-old truths today. So here we go. I'm going to give you some backstory of what's going on before we get to the point of what I want to talk about today. You need to understand all of this so you can understand the age-old truths that we're going to talk about today. So the account of Esther opens up with this king's name that I can't pronounce. King Ahu something. So, also known as, better in Greek history, secular history, his name is King Xerxes. So maybe your Bible says King Xerxes. Okay? So King Xerxes, he is the king of Persia. And Esther opens up with this king throwing a 6-month-long party. 6 month long. Oh my goodness. It's the royal reception for the ages, where he is entertaining all of the officials and rulers of his kingdom of 127 provinces. He's showing off his palace. He's showing off his women. He's showing off all of his wealth. This guy is a little bit into himself, okay? So, in the last 7 days of this 6-month royal celebration, now it's not just the officials who are invited, the royalty, so to speak. He invites everybody he invites everybody to come in. Rich, poor, royalty, non-royalty, all come in for the last 7 days of this party. And check this out. On the last day, he commands that his queen come in, and he wants to show off his prized possession, Queen Vashti. Now, it's written about her in the scriptures that she was very lovely to look at. And commentators say this, that King Xerxes was telling her to come in her birthday suit so that he could show her off to everybody. So, Queen Vashti refused to come. And she royally embarrassed the king. And he is so mad that he divorces her right on the spot and throws her out. And then he's so mad at her that he makes a decree of all the 127 provinces of his kingdom that if a wife did not do what her husband told her to do, that she could expect to be thrown out just like Queen Vashti, even killed. This guy is ruthless. So King Xerxes at this point, he finds himself without a queen. And so he wants a new one. So he essentially holds a beauty contest. But it's an awful contest. Of all the beautiful young virgins of the kingdom, and you can use your imaginations here, of all the awful things that went on, let's just say that I think that we would all love to punch this dude in the mouth for the way that he treated women. So one of these virgins who would please the king would eventually be crowned queen. And so we meet Esther. And now you need to know this about Esther before we get to the point today. She was an orphan. Her mom and dad had died. And so she was adopted by her older cousin, Mordecai. And they were Jewish by nationality. And Esther, hear this, she did not want to be in the position that she was in. She was forced into the king's harem. And then the time came for Esther to go before King Xerxes in this horrific contest. And watch what happens. Chapter 2, verse 17 says this. The king loved Esther more than any of the other young women. He was so delighted with her that he set the royal crown on her head and declared her queen. Can I just say that Esther would not have been happy about this? she would have lived in constant fear for what the king would do to her next. But it seems, as you read Esther, that she is able to somehow keep her head down and go a little bit under the radar, and she even has the ability to keep her dad, Mordecai, a little bit close to her. See, the king and the other officials, they didn't know that Mordecai and Esther were family. But now we see Mordecai hanging out at the king's palace gate. So he's always there. And one day he overhears, check this out, he overhears an assassination plot on the king. These two guys were talking about how they're going to take the king's life. So Mordecai reports this to Esther. So we know that they're communicating somehow. Okay? And she tells King Xerxes what Mordecai told her, and she gave Mordecai the credit. And so King Xerxes, he goes and he investigates this whole thing, and he finds out that it's true. And check this out, 2 dudes killed right on the spot. This dude was ruthless as a king, but he's also smart because he wrote down that Mordecai did this in the king's journal. Now, one day, Mordecai's hanging out by the king's gate again. He's sitting there, and Haman, let me tell you who Haman is. He's the head official of all of the 127 provinces. He is the head over all of the other 126 officials. And Haman walks by, and everyone bows down to Haman, except for Mordecai. Mordecai doesn't bow down. And when he's questioned, why are you not bowing down? He says it's because he's Jewish. Because we don't do that. Now, this is extremely important for us to understand what it's about to happen with Esther. So Mordecai had always told Esther to never reveal that she was Jewish in that palace. Don't say a word about being Jewish. So no one knew that Esther was Jewish. No one knew that Esther and Mordecai were related. So every time that Haman passed by, Mordecai would not bow down. And this infuriated Haman. He hated him. And he begins to hate him so much that he begins to hate Jewish people. And so he begins to plot a way in which he can use his power and his influence to be able to kill Mordecai and all of the Jewish people. So Haman goes to King Xerxes. And he says, and he stretches the truth, and he says, there's this group of people who are not doing what you, king, have told them to do. So I suggest to you, because they're not obeying you, that you should give me the reign to be able to kill them, pay people to kill them because they're not obeying you. And take a look at what King Xerxes said. The money and the people are both yours to do with as you see fit. This guy's ruthless. My goodness, the decree then goes forth. And news spread like wildfire. Look at this. Dispatches were sent by swift messengers into all the provinces of the empire, giving the order that all Jews, young and old, including women and children, must be killed, slaughtered, and annihilated on a single day. And friends, this news reaches Mordecai. And he is obviously deeply concerned because he's Jewish and he's going to be killed with all the rest of his people. The date of his death is set. And so he knows that all of his Jewish people, he gathers them together to fast and to mourn. But Esther didn't know this. She didn't know that this was going on because she's inside the palace. And she didn't know all that's going on outside. Remember, she's trying to keep her head down so that, kind of out of the eyes of the king. And so she hears that Mordecai is outside at the king's gate. He's causing a ruckus out there. Quite a scene out there. His clothes are all torn up. He's grieving this news. So she sends her most trusted advisor. His name is Hathach, to find out what's wrong. And this is now where we're going to pick up the account. Esther 4, chapter 7. Here we go. Mordecai told him the whole story, including the exact amount of money Haman had promised to pay into the royal treasury for the destruction of the Jews. And Mordecai gave Hathach a copy of the decree issued in Susa that called for the death of all Jews. And he asked Hathach to show it to Esther and explain to her the situation. He also asked Hathach to direct Esther to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. So Hathach returned to Esther with Mordecai's message. And then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message to Mordecai. So she said, all the king's officials and even the people in the province know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him for 30 days, which, by the way, I'm sure she was pretty good with, right? So Hathach gives Esther's message to Mordecai, and then Mordecai then sends this reply to Esther. So Mordecai says this, don't think for a moment that because you're in the palace that you'll escape when all the other Jews are killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place, but you and your relatives will die. Who knows if perhaps you were made queen for just such a time as this. So she is faced with one of these decisions. Right here, she has a decision to make. Does she do what is best for her, or does she do what's best for her people? Does she stand up? Does she speak up? Or does she stand by and stay silent? And this leads me to the first age-old truth. If you're taking notes with me today, the first age-old truth is this: you will be faced with defining moments that will prove your character. It's true, you will be faced with these kind of moments, no matter how large or small. You will be faced, or you have already been faced in your life with defining moments that will reveal your character and your integrity. Decisions that you will have to make that will show who you really are and what you're really made of. So things like this, when something goes wrong in your business, will you throw your employees under the bus? Or will you take the fall as the leader? Like this, to get ahead in school, will you cheat on the test? Or will you study hard? To gain the promotion at work, will you do something unethical to get there? Or will you work harder than anybody else in your department? To get out of trouble with your parents or your boss or that person in authority, will you lie? Or will you come clean with the truth? See, no matter who we are, we will be faced with these defining moments in our lives. And how we respond to them reveals who we really are. So let's see who Esther really is. She then replies to Mordecai, go and gather together all of the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go in to see the king. If I must die, I must die. So Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther ordered him. So the second age-old truth that I see in this text, if you're taking notes with me, is this: you need the wisdom and the support of God and others in your life. You do. See, even if you're here today and you're just exploring Christianity, you're trying to figure out God, maybe you don't even believe in God. In fact, let's do this for 1 second. Let's just put God aside for 1 second. And let's just talk about people in our lives. Okay, let's just talk about people. You've lived long enough to know that you need people, that this is true. Since you were a baby, this was true, right? When you were a baby, you needed somebody to change your diaper and feed you, right? When you were in elementary school, you needed teachers to help you, parents to help you, guardians to help you. When you were growing up in middle school and high school, you needed other people to help you navigate the complexities of growing up in today's world. especially then into adulthood. See, you and I, we're never meant to go at life alone without people by our side. See, none of us was ever meant to navigate this life all by ourselves. We need the support of friends, of family, of counselors so that we can thrive in this life. We need their advice. We need their experience. But you and I both know that there comes a time in our lives where human wisdom just falls short. Right? You know this. The experiences of our family and our friends just can't help us with what we're walking through. Right? They've never been there. They've never done that. And we need something more than just what the self-help books can give us. They don't know my situation. So we need something more. And that's exactly where Esther finds herself, between a rock and a hard place, a place that nobody had ever been before. And she needs wisdom from a higher place than what Mordecai can give to her. And she's desperate to be able to have an answer from heaven because her life is on the line. And she needs God to tell her what to do in this impossible situation. And so Esther calls upon her family and her friends to do something extreme, to call on, to seek the wisdom of God in a very powerful and unique way, to stand in the gap for her in this moment of desperation. So she tells her Jewish people to not to eat for 3 days and for 3 nights. Don't drink anything for 3 days or 3 nights. And check this out. This would have been something that was normal for the Jewish people. This would have been a discipline for those who were in relationship with God. They would have practiced this kind of thing, to seek God's wisdom, to know God better. This was a normal part of their routine that was expected as a Jewish person. They would set aside times where they were supposed to eat the meal, and then they would replace it, and they would pray and seek God for his wisdom. This also shows God that they trusted him, and they believed that their strength actually came from him, not from food, not from water. He was their strength. He was all they needed. And so, friends, we fast to have God reveal himself to us more and more. We fast to seek God, to seek his wisdom in our circumstances, especially when we have no clue what to do. And so, friends, I just want to tell you this. It's okay to admit that you don't have all the answers, because nobody does. That's age old. And we all need to seek the wisdom of God that is higher than what our little pea brains can figure out. In fact, James, the brother of Jesus, he told us to do this. If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. And friend, that's exactly what Esther did. During these 3 days of fasting, Esther is given courage and strength, knowing that a whole bunch of other people are praying and fasting to God on her behalf. And at some point during those 3 days, whether it was from supernaturally from God downloading it into her heart and mind, or whether it was through conversations with her maids inside the palace, Esther discovered a plan that she would then need to execute. Which leads me to the number 3 age-old truth, if you're taking notes today. Doing what is right is not always easy. Doing what's right is not always easy. You know this. See, just because she fasted and she prayed and others were fasting and praying for her didn't mean that all of a sudden her circumstances changed. In fact, they're about to get harder. See, she's going to have to go before King Xerxes. And remember, if she goes in there, just even goes in there, she's a dead woman. Let alone if she goes in there and King Xerxes does not extend his golden scepter to her, she's as good as dead. Remember, he's a ruthless king, and she's replaceable queen. So doing what is right here is not easy for Esther because her life is on the line. And for you and me to apply these truths to our lives, I mean, doing what's right is not always easy for us. Am I right? I mean, it's not. It's easier to cheat than to do the right thing and study hard for the test. I mean, it's easier to stand by and do nothing than it is to do the right thing and stand up for that kid who's being bullied. It's easier to just stay quiet and put your head down when others are gossiping instead of doing the right thing and calling them out and telling them to stop it. See, it's easier to keep your head down at work when you know something unethical is going on than it is to do the right thing and to be the whistleblower. See, you know this to be true. Doing the right thing isn't always easy. But listen, your integrity and your character is always worth it. It's always worth it. Your legacy is worth doing the right thing. And as Christians, you and I, we have models like Esther who can inspire us to do the right thing even when it will cost us. Even though it would have cost her her life, she determined to do what God had said to do. And for us, it may be our reputation. It may be our promotion. It may be friendships that would cost us. But it's always best to do what's right. And God will give you the strength and He'll give you the courage to do what's right at just the right time. And you know what? I love this about Jesus, is that He can empathize with us in this. Because He also had a tough time doing what was right. It's recorded in Matthew 26:39. It's also hard for Him to do the right thing. Look at this. He, Jesus, went on a little further and bowed His face down to the ground, praying, "My Father, if it's possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yet I want your will to be done, not mine." See, it wasn't easy for Him to go through with it. But yet He did the right thing. And He went through with it. He went to the cross for you and for me. He knew that to do what was right, it was going to cost Him His life. And that obviously wasn't easy for Him to go through. In Esther here, she knew that the right thing was to go before the king, even though it was going to cost her her life. And even after the 3 days of fasting were over, she decided to act on what was right. Which leads me to the final age-old truth for today, if you're taking notes. Your decisions to do what is right will impact generations. And you may never know it. Your decisions to do what is right will impact generations. Now listen, there is so much more to the Esther account here. And I wish I had, but we would be here all day if I were to tell you the entire Esther account. So make sure that you go and read it on your own. It is some good stuff. So let me kind of finish up here, okay? Esther's decision now to do what's right, she goes before the king and she's met with favor. And the king extended his gold scepter to her. And she then eventually told him everything that Haman had planned against the Jewish people, against her as well. And King Xerxes, he pops off, man. He flips out on Haman right there on the spot, has him executed right there on the very gallows that he had prepared to kill Mordecai. Is that not a turn of events, my friends? Right? On the very gallows. And then watch this. King Xerxes promoted Mordecai to assume Haman's position as the second most powerful person in all of the kingdom, because he remembered that Mordecai had once saved his life. He had written it down, remember? See, King Xerxes, he even goes so far, which is crazy that he does this, but he goes to modify the decree, the edict that went out. Something in and of itself that was unheard of at this time. And the Jewish people, they were saved. All because Esther did what was right. Now I want you to think about this. Think about this. Generations of Jewish people have recounted this piece of history every year since in a precious festival. Generations of Christians are a result of Esther's decision to do what was right. See, Jesus was Jewish. And Jesus, he acted in accordance with God's plan, and he set aside his own personal anguish, and he did what was right. And he died on a cross for you and me, for the forgiveness of the entire world's sins. And the disciples of Jesus, they were Jewish. And they did what was right by welcoming in an outsider by the name of Saul, who changed his name to Paul. Do you remember him? And they welcomed more people who were like him as they spread the word about Jesus Christ throughout the entire land of who he was and what he had done for them on the cross and how he resurrected 3 days later from the grave. And it spread like wildfire. In fact, John, he wrote about it this way. Check this out. He wrote about how God swung open the doors for all people to experience this, not just Jewish people. And look what he wrote. You know this. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever, not just Jewish people, that whoever, that's us, believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. See, I don't think Esther realized the impact that her decision could have on a generation of people. I don't think she got it. But friends, I don't ever want you to underestimate the power of you doing what is right in these defining moments. You may never know how your decision to do what is right can impact not only your future, but other people's future. Your decisions, they have a ripple effect in this world. And you never know how your decision to do what is right can influence others. Your decision, think about it, your decision to stand up for that kid being bullied could have a ripple effect for other people standing up against it as well. Your decision to stop the gossip could save somebody's reputation and also their kids and their grandkids. Your decision to report the unethical behavior could lead not only to somebody else's promotion, but maybe to your promotion as well. Your decision, check this out, to do what is right in a defining moment, especially when it costs you, could become a standard of behavior for your kids, for your grandkids, for your great-grandkids. And they talk about you in that way. When you made that one decision, they want to be like you. You never know when your decision to do what is right in a defining moment could influence laws of this nation 50 years from now, 75 years from now, because you chose to do the right thing in a defining moment. See, friends, listen, you may never live to see your legacy of doing what is right in a defining moment, but generations will benefit from you doing the right thing and showing your character and your integrity. And friends, that is an underlying spiritual reality that is age old. So as I close, I want to ask you this question. How do you want to be remembered? Because like Esther, somebody is going to tell your story. It's eventually going to become somebody else's history. Your family, your friends, your coworkers, your neighbors. And what do you want them to say? What do you want them to write about your history? See, even though times are going to pass and changes and innovation are going to come and go like typewriters and encyclopedias and cassette tapes, the age-old truth is this. We're all going to face these defining moments that will reveal our character. And it's in those moments where we're going to need the wisdom of God and the support of God and others in our lives. Why? Because doing what is right is not always easy. But it's in those moments where you make a decision to do what's right at a defining moment that can impact generations that you never dreamed of. So my prayer for you, Northway, is that you will be remembered for doing what is right.